Let me first ask you, was this your first title? Sorry. The choice.
That's interesting. Was it my first title? I think the only debate I had was, is it rationally irrational or irrationally rational? Other than that, I didn't have a third choice.
Wonderful. So somewhere, I mean, you say that we have brought a certain emotion to business now, you know, when we talk about behavioral economics now, which was missing earlier. If we look at the approach that you have outlined, you know, by citing all the top stories and chapters, how can businesses benefit from it? If you could make it simpler for even the management students to understand what it means in the current context of business, and how can they benefit from this?
Wonderful, Ruhail. Ultimately, it's a business lit fest, so he's obviously zeroing down on what is the applicability of behavioral economics into business. Let me tell you, supposing you walk into a showroom and you see there a shirt which is priced at 3,500. You scratch your head, you wonder, is it worth buying? Is it a little too high for my budget? And so forth. You walk another 30 steps, the same identical shirt, along with a pair of shorts, is displayed also for 3,500. You suddenly think the fellows must have made a mistake somewhere. There the shirt was 3,500, same brand, but there's a short for free along with it. The idiot has made a mistake, let me exploit and quickly pick it up. Right? You quickly pick up the shorts and the shirt, pay 3,500 and walk out. You think you've been very smart. The fact is perhaps no. The business never expected you to buy the standalone shirt. The idea was to sell only the shirt with the shorts, but they've been able to sell it. And they're selling it in much greater numbers than they would have if they had not put that shirt alone in the first place. Nudging, they are guiding you into an action which you may not have originally wanted to make. You understand? So you can get exploited in the process. So, but if you understand behavioral economics better, next time you'll be careful. Ullu mere ko bana raha hai. You will be smarter and won't fall for it. You see, when you buy a car, often the car dealers will sell you all kinds of accessories. They are all actually priced 2.5 to 3 times higher than what it would cost you if you drive 50 meters away and buy it from a standalone accessories shop. What happens? When you are buying a 15 lakh rupee car, spending another 7,000, 8,000, 15,000 looks like nothing to you. Even insurance companies. Insurance companies will charge you 3 times if you buy the insurance through the dealer. But if you go on a standalone basis to an insurance company, the same insurance with the same features can be bought at 1/3 the price. Now you understand where the business, where the behavioral economics is coming in? It's coming in the sense that people often look at their costs not on a standalone basis, but as a portion of the main investment that they are making. So 15,000 rupees looks like a very small amount when you are buying a car worth 15 lakhs. But on a standalone basis, you would any day shop very carefully. You will not pay 15,000 if you can get the same product for 5,000 50 meters away. So now you're beginning to see how businesses use it. If you're a business executive, you have some tactics in your bag. If you are a customer, you have some defenses in your bag. So it's up to you how you use it. But I could go on. I mean, I could spend a whole day giving more examples of how governments can use nudges and how policymakers can use nudges. You know, the best known example of nudging is in the men's urinal. They often have a fly drawn in the middle so that people tend to aim at it. So you'll spill less, okay? So that is nudging again, all right? So yeah, I could give any number of examples.
Yeah, but if you make people aware, I'm sure, you know, big brands will be in trouble, you know, if people are aware of how they are being, led into this.
No, but the interesting thing is, even after you know what is the right thing to do, you still feel terrible when you are faced with the situation. For example, I gave the examples, but even then, when you go to the airport and you miss your flight by a few seconds, you still feel a greater level of regret than missing it by a large margin. So knowing doesn't help actually. That is the beauty of behavioral economics. It's not an easy tweak that just because you have understood, you'll be able to escape it. No, you don't escape it. That's the sturdiness of the whole thing.
And that irrationality is also a certain context, a certain perception that you rationalize to yourself, and you give it a rational meaning, right? Right. Okay, you also touched upon that we need to inculcate awareness about it, not just when you are out of your IIMs and all of that, but much before. Do you think it is happening in the current, the way our curriculum is designed? Do we have enough attention at the MBA level, to inculcate awareness about behavioral economics right now, or we're still a long way to go?
You see, much of awareness, Ruhail, if I understand your question right, I would say much of that awareness depends on your ability to reflect. Ability to reflect comes through reading. And by reading, I don't mean WhatsApp messages, I don't mean tweeted articles shortened as a fast food for, on the move kind of a reading. I mean serious reading of books and reflecting upon them. I'm unfortunately a little disconnected with the younger generation today because it's been a few years since I taught MBAs in Europe and Canada, etc. India, of course, I stopped teaching in Ahmedabad almost 20 years ago. So I'm not in direct contact, but my hunch is that students these days are increasingly reading less than my generation used to, for instance.
Reading books, but they're reading otherwise.
Otherwise they may be reading, right? But I'm saying that reading doesn't allow you time to reflect. Because before one tweet message is over, there are 5 more tweets landing on your phone. So you don't reflect sufficiently. Book is the only way you get to reflect. And that, I believe, if it's not happening sufficiently, I would imagine they are probably not well prepared. But if there are some who are still very, very conscious of this and are book lovers, of course, I can read book on, it's still a book, So you could keep your love of a gadget alive and still be a book reader. So I would imagine that, there are people who have come up with PPT presentations for books. I mean, first of all, they're beginning to write 80-page books and 45-page books and so on. On top of it, making a bloody PPT of it. I mean, what sense does it make? You might as well not read it,
I think also, sorry to
reflection is the point.
I think the engagement on digital and in printed format is also different. That's an established fact. So why don't we take a couple of questions if there are any? They're all convinced, I guess.
No, it's always the initial hiccup.
Anyone, any question? This is your chance to ask. Oh, wonderful. I think they're all. Let me ask you a couple of more questions. What has been the backstory of writing this book, talking about the top names, the Nobel laureates? Was it difficult for you to choose only these 10 names? What made you, out of a lot you could have referred to, what was that led you to choose these 10 names?
Very good. I like that question because, you see, all my books, the 10 or 11 books I've written with Penguin and HarperCollins in the popular domain, they're all on very different kinds of themes. I've never repeated a genre, so never got slaughtered into one kind of a book and so on. My first one was Games Indians Play, which was, interestingly, that was my first book and remains the bestseller till today. All the other books put together probably would have sold only about as much. But this book happened, it was purely conceived, conceptualized, written and published during the COVID period. Okay.
Another addition to the COVID era. Yeah.
So I was thinking about what to write on, and basically you have to draw from your own reserves when you want to write a book. And if one thing I was reasonably well read on was on behavioral economics, because I also used to teach it in SDA Bocconi University in Milan, Italy. For almost 25 years, every year I taught. So I had a lot of reading, and then I said, if I were to do anything on behavioral economics, what do I do? Because all these great authors, the names that went from Dan Ariely to all of them, Kahneman to Thaler and so on, had written outstanding books. So what could I add to that? Then it struck me that I could summarize the work of everyone who has contributed to the development of behavioral economics. But there are a whole lot of them. There are more than 100 scholars who have contributed. And there are more than 10,000 articles and books on the subject. So where do you make a beginning? Then suddenly it struck me, why don't I choose Nobel laureates as a benchmark? But even after doing so, it wasn't easy. For example, Arindam Banerjee, he's an Indian Nobel laureate. Okay? And in India, even if somebody has a vague connection to India, we call him Indian Nobel laureate. And this guy is a real Indian Nobel laureate, even though he might have got it only in the US, because of his work done in the US, but he's a full-fledged Indian. Unlike Mother Teresa, who's hardly an Indian by birth, but we accommodate them any which way, So I said, now should he be included? It's a tough question. I finally did not include him. And it's, it remains a thorny issue. Why would I exclude him? I said he had not contributed to the development of behavioral economics. In my mind, he had used the methodology that behavioral economists use, the experimental method. But he had not contributed to the development of the behavioral economics itself. So I left him out. So it was not easy. It was a difficult choice. Similarly, Tragedy of Commons is tangential to behavioral economics. It's not full-fledged behavioral economics. But I have brought it in because it also involves game theory, which involves strategic thinking and so on. So I brought that in. That is how Ostrom and Williamson find a mention in the 10. So it was some exercise, but it ended up well because almost everyone who has read the book, among people who are also quoted there inside and on the cover and so on, seem to agree that by and large the list is reasonably sensible. Yeah.
Let me ask you my final question. We are in the Silicon Valley of India, founders, and there is a certain perception that leaders who understand concepts like behavioral economics have to come from institutions. But we have seen a lot of businessmen who haven't known it, who are not aware that they know it, but they yet know it. Do you think behavioral economics can always be taught, or people can just know?
I'll tell you something. In Bangalore, you will recall a news item maybe a year or two ago, in a popular movement against potholes on our streets, an artist, not a behavioral economist by a far shot, an artist, he prepared a huge
visual
alligator made of polycarbonate material, and placed it near a pothole, which suddenly gained traction so hugely that within 24 hours the BBMP filled that pothole. So this was the power of nudging. Okay, what direct applications and direct letters and direct narabazi cannot do, this man had done it by placing a polycarbonate alligator on that, because it suddenly caught attention and it nudged people into taking action. So I would say that many aspects of behavioral economics are more intuitive thinking and reflection, as I said earlier. Once you are largely introduced to the idea of behavioral economics, with some examples that I gave, you'll find more examples there and so on, then it's entirely a creative process for you to think of more situations where, for instance, I think, I forget the name of the place. there was a curve which was very dangerous, and people would not slow down and take fast turns and get overturned. The rate of accidents was very, very high. They tried putting a whole lot of messaging, please slow down, accident prone zone, all of that, but it didn't work, and accidents continued to happen. Then what someone did was, one of the city officials, he painted horizontal lines of the same kind which are there in other crossings and so on, and these partition lines which are like dotted lines that we see in the middle of the road, he put those lines close to each other. So even when you were going at the same speed of 60 km per hour, the dotted lines were passing, or the horizontal lines were passing very quick under you. So you thought you were going very fast. So you tended to slow down. Okay? So this is a very, very interesting physiological way of nudging people's behavior. Okay? So I'm saying most of these will come only when people, A, understand a new phenomenon like this, if it is new in this generation, and then reflecting upon it, and then getting creative, thinking out of the box, and bringing more solutions to play.
So I have a question from a publisher friend who has just WhatsApped me to ask you, we are living in this digital age, we are consuming content on digital, WhatsApp, Twitter, reading online. The power of print. Do you think, we're doing a book festival, of course, what is your view on the power of print in the digital surroundings that we have?
Well, the reality is that power is thinning. That is the reality. So rational statement is that the power of digital print is weakening.
Irrationally is we're doing this.
Irrationally, it's not going to be standing in good stead for you to let that happen. Okay? And today we are beginning to see many other abuses of the media, social media, IT, and so on. You get mugged, you get shamed, you get blackmailed, all of that. So perhaps reducing some time from all of that and devoting a little more time with books, striking a golden compromise would probably be good for personality itself of people, and bringing the digital media back, or print media back. And by print media, I don't mean a book in this form. It could be a Kindle, it could be an audio, audible.in or whatever, it could be an audio book. But it has to be a book, not a fast food version of a book. So I would think that ultimately that is what will lead to reflection. You see, as it is, India is not a very research-oriented country. A research-oriented country where people do not, especially the young generation, does not sufficiently reflect on whatever little it reads, is a double-barrel gun for future. So I would imagine that you will see, if you are better read than the next person, your performance, talking about down-to-earth benefits of reading, let me put it that way, will be much better. If you understand a particular phenomenon better because you have read the book, you have reflected, tomorrow when you go for an interview, you'll stand out. Because 8 out of 10 do not read sufficiently, but the 2 who read, for instance, will stand out a yard above the rest of them. So I think make reading at least an hour a day. An hour a day is not asking for much. Make it a habit. And interestingly, you can read whatever you like. Whatever catches your fancy. It doesn't matter if it's a spy novel, it's a mystery, it's a murder mystery, whatever it is. First, get into the habit of reading. Someone said, I think it was Ronald Reagan, if I'm not mistaken, there is no difference between those who do not read and those who cannot read. They're both illiterate for all practical purposes. And this is true even among professionals. If you ask, when did you last read an article in your profession, many of them are hard put to name one article that they read in their own profession 3 years ago or 4 years ago and so on. So reading is a challenge, and I think it will be a great investment in yourself. It's a distinguisher between those who make investment in themselves and those who do not. Make reading a habit. you will prosper with it.
And that's why we're going to 21 cities with this message. So thank you so much, Mr. Raghunathan, for this wonderful conversation.
Thank you.